overwhelm into manageable and practical tools for everyday use.
Okay.
So we're back.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Yeah, catch me reading, guys. So today we are going to talk to you about, or tell you what we think about burnout, the secret to unlocking the stress cycle by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. So if you're on our YouTube channel, you can see I'm holding it up. For those of you who are on the podcast, check out the YouTube channel. But it's in the notes. The title and stuff is in the notes. So this is a book that I picked up, I think, first, right? And I started reading it and I was like so excited that I called you and I was like, oh my God, I take pictures of parts of the book and I like text them over to Chris and I'm like, hey, check this out. So it's a really interesting read. And so basically, just like the title says, essentially the argument is that we're living in a high stress society, and that most women at some point experience burnout, whether it's you know full blown, like, complete burnout in everything in life, or it could just be professional, or it could just be personal, but basically that women are experiencing burnout. And I essentially, I guess the premise is that they're trying to provide you with some ways of not only minimizing stress, but also like managing the emotions as you're living through them, and hopefully living a more joyful life that's a little less less on the edge. Right? So it's an interesting book, I think. There was a lot of points where I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That's totally what I'm experiencing. What were your thoughts? I know you had a little different experience because you were listening. So
So yeah, I'll say a couple things right off the bat is just from the beginning of it, they talk about the real life experience of women. Like if you and I would write a book, I feel like this is the type of book we would write together. Like I like the fact that it's very realistic, and they put it out there that, how women, we kind of take on the weight of the world as much as we can. And if you tell us that we have to take on wellness and self-care, we're going to take that on as well. Right. So here we are, like taking on self-care. We're going to do as much as we can to help everybody that we can and help ourselves. And then, little Charlie, something's going to happen with little Charlie, and then that's going to take priority.
Yeah.
And then everything is going to go to shit. And then how do you kind of pick up the pieces? And it's very, very realistic. And that's the part that I appreciate the most and got a kick out of listening to their like real world examples. I also like the fact, but it's sad that I can relate to what they shared as, I guess it was, I wrote some notes because, there's nothing that retains up in this brain anymore right now. The Herbert Freudenberger back in 1975, at the beginning of the book, who actually defined what burnout is. And he defines it as emotional exhaustion, which is fatigue from carrying too much for too long; depersonalization, which is depletion of caring, empathy, and compassion; and number 3 is decreased sense of accomplishment. So feeling that nothing you do makes any difference. So once I started listening to this, I was like, oh yeah, well, that's how I'm feeling right now.
Check.
Yeah. Like check all 3. And then it's like 20 to 30% of teachers in the United States feel this way. And 50% of medical professionals feel this way. Like anybody in the helping field pretty much feels this way. And now they're extending the studies on to parents.
Hmm.
And it's just fascinating to
Yeah.
me. And I also like the fact that, um, listen, I'm all about the science and I trust science to an extent because I'm very cautious about science. They put like a very, well, it's a few minutes for me when I listen to it. I don't know how many pages it is for you when you read it. But they talk about it for quite a few minutes about, the pros and cons of science. Like there's pitfalls of it. It talks about like, listen, it's how far we've come, but how far we have yet to go. Like
Right.
there's limitations of science too. So when they refer to science in the book, here's some things to be mindful of when you're listening to it. So right off the bat, just to go into the book knowing all that and being mindful of that is, I love that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that the questions that they bring up about science are really interesting, and I also believe in science. I am a, I science is fact, right? We find facts out by using science. But this is something that I talk about all the time with people, about the profession of education, working in education, is that there any any helping profession, um, education included, there is some science that can be applied to it, but there is a human component, and I think that that's what they're trying to get at here with that, with their introduction about science, is that, yeah, absolutely, we can apply science to, burnout and stress and anxiety and how to address those things, but at the same time there's always a human component, so that gives you the exception to every rule kind of thing,
Right.
which I think is really important to acknowledge, which they do, which I think they really do a really nice job of, like you said.
Mhm.
And um, I highlighted something at the very beginning of the book, which I thought was so funny. It's probably like in the introduction, um, and as I was reading it, I felt like, I think on the first page, I'm like, oh. Um, but it says, this is a book for any woman who has felt overwhelmed and exhausted by everything she had to do and yet still worried she was not doing enough. Um, and then it goes on to talk a little bit about, you've heard the usual advice over and over again: exercise, green smoothies, self compassion, coloring books, mindfulness, bubble baths, gratitude. And I thought, oh, are we doing this? Are we adding to people's stress? Are we adding to their anxiety? And, I thought to myself, well, I think we all have to be super reflective on our own practice and our own behavior and our own feelings. And again, the human component comes into it, right?
Right.
Have I been exercising, which is something that to me is incredibly important? No,
Mhm.
because I'm in the most stressful season, um, right now, and I'm really struggling. Should I probably prioritize and make time for exercise to address the stress? Probably, but I'm not. And I think that the thing that hit home with me was that they said, listen, the problem is not that women don't try, because they do, right? The problem
Mhm.
is that the world has turned wellness into yet another goal, right? That if you're not getting doing all the things like the shoulds, that you're missing out, right? You're not achieving what you have to achieve. So anyway, um, it it touched me, like you said. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, I'm like,
Boom.
yeah, yeah,
Light bulb moment. It was like everything. Yeah.
yeah. It was like hit right in the face with it.
Mhm.
Um, so a couple other things. I like to look at the actual book itself and the logistics of the actual book. I really like how at the end of each chapter, and this is something I think I texted you, was the TL semicolon DR colon whatever, it's too long, didn't read, right?
Mhm.
Um, they summarize every chapter, which I absolutely 100% love, because this is one of those books that it's not a novel where you're reading a story and you remember the characters and where the story is. Like, you can always go back to that last thing that you were reading and kind of read the too long don't remember part, the little summary, because it's bulleted. It's phenomenal. And then kind of decide to yourself, oh, I remember this. Oh, it's the human giver syndrome, and all that stuff. Um, so I did love that. And I really loved the discussion of the monitor, like the stress response monitor, like how you how
You're
you kind of
taking all of mine. Yeah. It's
oh
like, well, I have, yeah. Keep going. Yeah.
anyway, so go ahead. You tell me other things that you liked,
No,
because
no, no, no. Keep going with your monitor.
I, it's just one of those things that I thought was like it was hard for me to understand. I had to go back and reread it a bunch of times because I was like, I'm not understanding this. I'm not understanding what that concept is. But then the more I went back and reread it, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I'm now seeing what's going on here. But that was really it. I do suffer from human giver syndrome, by the way. I'm sure
As
you
do
all,
I.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you also suffer
Yeah.
from human giver syndrome. Anyway, so tell me what you think. What were some other things that you were that
Same.
touched you?
I I highlighted humor
Humor.
giver,
Yes.
human giver syndrome, and then I
Mm-hmm.
highlighted the TLDR because I love that. I love when chapters are summarized at the end. Um, the completing the stress cycle,
Mm.
that was huge for me, just to understand the concept of completing the stress cycle. And I think that that is very important for everybody to read and understand, is completing that stress cycle, um, because of the detrimental effect stress can have on us moving forward.
Well,
um,
emotionally and mentally and physically,
Everything, yeah,
all of the things.
all of the things.
Right.
um, and then the bubble of love was the other thing. The bubble of love.
Somehow I should have known the bubble of love. All right,
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about some of these things. So, human giver syndrome. What is human giver syndrome?
So we as human givers, I'll say women because it's typically women, are expected to offer our time, our bodies, our love, our humanity
Mm-hmm.
to the human beings. And I'll stress human beings because
Right.
we are human givers.
Right.
So, typically human givers are women and human beings are men
Or children.
or children, yes.
Yeah.
if if we go against the grain and we have demands, that's where the challenges come up. um, so we're not expected to interrupt the process of other humans being. We're supposed to abide by the human giver expectations. So often when we talk about self-care, when we talk about wellness, when we talk about things like what you and I talk about, which, you know what, not for nothing, but I think I know in season one, we've talked about this, but when we focus on things like ourselves and self-care and wellness, it's viewed as selfish. So even if maybe, well, a lot of times when we're talking about human givers versus beings, it is viewed as selfish, but we may even view it ourselves as being selfish because we are givers.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. I this instantly I thought mom guilt. I thought of the term mom
absolutely.
guilt because it's like um I have gotten pretty good at this, to be honest with you. To being like, No, right now it's not your time, it's my time. But yeah, I think this human giver syndrome, I think the one big takeaway that I took from this one, thinking about this in the context of what they talked about in the book, was that it's not just the person who suffers from human giver syndrome that has to be able to like get away from that. It's
Mm-hmm.
also the support system around that person has to acknowledge that that's not a healthy way to exist.
Right.
It's not a healthy way to be constantly giving of yourself and having nothing of your own. No demands or requirements or requests or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But it's interesting that the one statement that they make in the book is your body, with its instinct for self preservation, knows on some level that the human giver syndrome is slowly killing you. I was like, ugh. It's like terrifying. But
Mm-hmm.
but it's true. It is true.
It is very much so.
So they claim that the book is the prescription to heal the disease. So
Yes.
if you feel like you're a human giver, you might want to take a look at this
Yes.
for sure, right? Um,
Yes.
okay. So what's your go talk about your bubble too?
Bubble of love.
Yes, your bubble.
Bubble of love is connection. Bubble of love is connection. It is connection.
Essentially.
Yeah, that is what it is. It's connection. It's connection to others. It's connection. We as human beings thrive on that. So that is what the bubble of love is. So I just love that. I just got a kick out of the fact that they call it the bubble of love. So, me, when I heard
Yeah.
that, I was like chuckling. So,
Yeah.
the fact that, you know, right now for me, I'm kind of in my own little bubble in terms of I'm not very connected with many people. Um, for different reasons. Mainly because I'm just tired and trying to adjust with my own life. And the human giver syndrome has gotten me worn down, and the burnout and everything in this book just was my life, and it's been an adjustment the past couple of years. But for the most part, my life and everything I believe in is that bubble of love, that connection with others. I do thrive on the connection to others and very much value that. It's only been as of recent that I have had to just kind of go in my little shell. So that's, I think, why I clung to it so much and valued the way they shared it.
Yeah. I think your connection is a little different now too. Like um when I from the outside looking in at you, how you are connected to other people,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the people that you have typically been connected to over time. It's now people that you are equipped to help, you know.
Yeah.
It's always been something that you've been as a helper, and I think you just have a different population that you are helping now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's always sort of been your MO. But um, I do want to touch upon their acknowledgement of gratitude in this book, because I think that was really interesting. Because as into gratitude as we are here on Catch Me on the Exhale,
Mm-hmm.
I really like how they gave very specific exercises to do to incorporate gratitude in a way that um, sort of infuse that connection, that idea of connection. So, um, the short term, quick fix gratitude, that's what I was looking for when you were talking. But
Oh, sorry. No,
no,
didn't
it was, but
didn't
it was,
read that.
didn't say it.
Didn't see
Um,
it through Zoom.
uh, but it was interesting because they have two things, right? So the short term quick fix gratitude boost is gratitude for who you have, which I think is really important, because having gratitude and acknowledging the people you have in your life and what that means to you, I think that's a connection that I can make personally, because when I think about my gratitude, it's always about the individuals that I have relationships with, or specific things that had happened between us.
Mm-hmm.
What it's you or my husband or my kids or somebody I work with, that kind of thing. And then the other one that I really like, this is cool. The other thing that they mention is called a long-term gratitude lifter, is gratitude for how things happen. So at the end of each day, think of some events and circumstances for which you feel grateful and write about them, which I thought was really cool. So give the event or the circumstance a title, and then write down what happened, including the details about what anyone involved, including you, did or said, and then describe how it made you feel at the time and how you feel now as you think about it, and then explain how the event or circumstance came to be. So what was the cause, what confluence of circumstances came together to create the moment. So it was interesting because they reference, like if you feel yourself getting negative about anything with regard to it,
Mm-hmm.
to like acknowledge that sure, there's some negativity that could have existed in something huge that you've just accomplished, or that you're really wasn't important, but set aside the negativities and try to refocus as you're talking about the things that you're grateful for. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really cool. And then they go on to say the research asks people to do this for 3 events every day for a week. And it says that it trained Emily, who is one of the authors, trained her brain to notice not just the positive events themselves, but also the personal strengths that she leveraged to create them, and the external resources that made it possible, which, you know, allows you to like ground yourself, ground your gratitude in like everything, all the circumstances surrounding um, that event or that thing that happened. So anyway, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was like, I'm always looking for like, I don't want to say rules, but a process or a procedure or
Mm-hmm.
something that you can revert back to. So when you lose track, like I can go to this process and I can do this thing. So I have my little cheat sheet checked off in there. Like I got to go back to this page and do this again.
That's what's good about having the book.
Yeah, I do. And most books I write all over. I like have like things scribbled in the sides and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
um, the one thing that like freaked me out, I'll be very honest with you, was the mad woman. Did you read that? Do you recall that part where they talk about get to know your mad woman?
Yeah.
Tune into the fragile part and the difficult
Mm-hmm.
parts of yourself.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me because I had to keep going back and like rereading it and thinking about like, because I don't think I'm good at that, at seeing where my fragility lies and where my my crazy part. Like I'm not good at figuring it out and like focusing on it and like really seeing um what my issues are, I guess.
Right. I'm not either. That's like noticing your blind spots, like,
Yeah, yeah,
or more than your blind spots. It's a lot of introspection and a lot of awareness. And um, although there's some things that I am aware of, there's, I'm not there yet either. So I did
mm,
have difficulties with that one as well. I did. Some difficulties. There's some parts of it that I did understand and I could relate to, but there's still a lot of work to be done there.
yeah. Same, same,
Mm-hmm.
same, same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the final thing that I had written down that I really like, besides the anecdotes, the stories of people who experience these things, I did write that down too, was there was a lot of, um, I felt like, uh, how do you describe them? Like activities that you could do to address these types of things, like redefining winning. There was like a whole thing about redefining winning in your life. So like having a goal, and then when you're not at the goal that you had set, you know, redefining where you are and how you can kind of adjust your expectations, not necessarily being like, oh, it's okay to not have achieved a goal, but to redesign the path to get to the goal so that
Yep.
you could get beyond like your stumbling blocks and get beyond the things that were holding you up, or the things that were stressful and things like that. So there was a lot of activities like that I thought were really helpful and interesting. Did I use them? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, you know, life. So this is one of those things that I feel like you have to keep around for a long time. This book is like one of those books you have to keep around for a long time, and like have like little post-it notes sticking out of it, and like
You have to keep referring to it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to look at this thing now, and I'm going to spend 3 months like really looking at, you know, addressing this behavior or addressing this thing in the book. Um,
I don't know what the book looks like, but I know the audio book came with like a PDF attachment.
oh,
So
all right.
like a worksheet at one of the chapters had a worksheet. So I don't
There was
um
there was a handful of things like they had
yeah.
like this calendar. They had like a calendar in the
Yep.
book. They had like oh,
Maybe
they
it
had a
was the
bunch of
one thing I was interested in. I was like, "Oh, I need to pull that off."
yeah, yeah.
Um
They had like smashing the patriarchy. That was a fun one.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, my something larger. And so there's a bunch of like interesting like little activities. I feel like it's one of those books, again, it's definitely not like a novel where you're going to sit down, you're going to read the whole thing,
No.
you know, cover to cover. It's going to be one of those things where you're reading it over time and using pieces of it as they apply to specific instances in your life. So
Yep.
um but I was super interested in it. I thought they were really, I liked how they wrote too. It wasn't like dry sciencey stuff. It was like
Right.
you were listening to somebody talk to you.
And it
So
was their stories too. They shared a lot about themselves, which I really value.
yeah,
Um, I like that they share a lot of their own stories too. So they use, you know, other characters as well, but they use them themselves in the stories. So I
yeah,
really like that. They share a lot of their own journeys in it. So
yeah, yeah. It was definitely cool. So, um, what do you think?
this is one of my highest rating books. I love this book.
Really,
Yeah, this is one of my
really?
yes. Yep.
Oh, I'm loving that.
Yes. Yes. And I love the fact
Interesting.
that you shot me that text and said, you got to read this book. Like, because it was just, I could relate to it from start to finish. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is whatever. Are we doing 10, 5, 10,
5
10,
out
10,
of
5,
5 stars.
5,
You're
5.
giving
I'm
it a
doing
5 out of 5.
5. Yep.
Boom.
Boom.
I'm gonna give it 4.5 out of 5. I don't know why. I think I just need to be the tough one, the tough critic.
You be the tough one. You be the tough one. I'm giving 5 out of 5. I really dig it. Why are you giving it 4 out of 5? 4.5.
I
Just to
don't
be
know.
tough, just to
I
be a
don't
hard
know.
ass.
I can give it 5 out of 5. I don't. I'm. Who knows?
You can do whatever you
Uh,
want.
it's
I
my
love
world.
this.
You're living in it. No.
That's right.
All right, guys. So that was it. Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. It was awesome. 5 out of 5 stars. So it was great talking to you guys, and hopefully you got something good out of this, and you'll pick up the book or find the audio book, and we'll catch you on our next reading, I guess.
Catch me reading. Catch me reading.
Oh, all right, guys. Catch you later.
Deuces.